Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to Be with Mike G, the show of life, the show of Michoacan, Mezcal, veterinary school, and so much more with today's guest, the amazing mezcalero of Michoacan, Mr. Emilio Vieira. This is my first bilingual interview to release, you guys, and I had some help with my friend Andres in the translation. I want to make both versions available, but hopefully this is the first of many conversations with some of the just incredible talents and palates of Mexico that bring us some of the greatest mezcal and agave spirits we've ever tasted. It's a lovely chat with Emilio. I'm going to be completely honest in saying I don't speak Spanish fluently, so I lost a lot of the really integral meaning and some of these emotional subtexts that were there when we first chat. But upon translating, it was really wonderful to get to talk to him, and it was a great moment to see this man come back to the States, capture audiences, and share some amazing mezcal via the brilliant David Suro. So, without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy this great chat with Emilio Vieira. So I was reading just today in your biography, Emilio, that upon returning back to the United States from where you once were born, it's completely different now in Houston. How is it different now from when you were a kid?
It's been different in terms of my perspective of returning to Houston. Really, when I left Houston, I left very young, about 2.5 years old. And afterwards, I had the idea to come back to the U.S. to work. And now I have the intention to promote our brand of mezcal.
So what kinds of things? I've read about some taekwondo for Emilio. What other kinds of things was he getting into when he was a kid?
Well, when I was in Mexico, other than studying, I practiced taekwondo. I really loved going to the countryside with my grandparents, and there I helped with all the work on my vacations there, and helping my father with the production of mezcal. And I ended my taekwondo as a black belt, and I really loved it.
When he was in these countrysides, did he at an early age feel a connection to the nature, a connection to those plants?
Yes, because in reality, the agave plant is a plant that around them there's so many things. There's trees, there's rivers, there's the sun, there's animals, the farmers working around them. In reality, it's an ecosystem. And the way that the farmers in those years worked the land. My grandparents, they always tried to work how to not negatively affect the land so that would constantly produce in equilibrium.
So it begs the question then, with such a focus in agriculture, what drove him to go to the university and what did he study there?
In the university, I studied to become a veterinarian, very focused in working with animals. And there I studied in the University of Michoacan, San Nicolas, near Morelia. And I liked a lot working in the countryside, so I preferred to work with animals because in reality the production of agave and mezcal in those years it was very limited, due to the regulations and the norm of origin.
Well, they're very complicated here, incredibly. Was there any point in which you were not going to enter into the family business, so to speak? Was there another kind of industry or another career that he might have went into?
Después de que terminé como after I was done with school to become a veterinarian, fue cuando vino una pequeña temporada. That was when there was a short period of time that I came to Houston to work. I worked in making cement pipes. And it was in this time that it was really important that I needed to return to Mexico. But what I thought was more interesting was to return back to work with mezcal. And so it was there that I left my work as a veterinarian and returned to the U.S. and worked solely with mezcal in 2005.
At what point did he realize he wanted to continue the tradition of his family making mezcal?
I think that in the moment that I was away from my family here in the U.S., when I was alone and away from my family and working really hard, it was in that moment that I decided to return back to Mexico to produce mezcal because as well I realized that my family, since I'm an only child, my family needed my help and needed me there to help them with the tradition.
Interesting. Did he ever feel obligated to carry on the family tradition, or was something he really felt was his calling?
Let's say that being here helped me to really think about what I wanted and what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, because before this, after I finished school, I had about 2 or 3 years where I didn't have a direction of where to go. So it helped me to be alone here to really think about my decision of the future.
Right. So it's kind of one of those situations in where family really takes you where you need to go. So the mezcal piece, was that something that growing up the family often drank? Is it something that was a part of his childhood?
Well, yes.
Mi familia, mi papá.
Well, my family, my father, my grandfather, my grandmother, they made and sold mezcal, but it wasn't very cultural. It wasn't very important because it was very hard to actually sell it in those years. So they made it every year, but it was a very short period of time because it was very difficult to sell mezcal. It was very difficult to sell mezcal because the people in those times, the people that lived in the city, they felt that drink was of low quality. And really only the peasant farmers drank it, and a small sector of sheep farmers. And it was a very disparaged drink, and really only the men in the field would drink them. And maybe older gentlemen that would drink it drank it at some point in their lives, but it was a very small group that drank them.
So with what is kind of this resurgence in agave spirits, or rather an increased interest, how do you think people feel about mezcal now?
I think that people, and really in a niche of the market, that they got the chance to possibly learn about tequila and mezcal from Oaxaca, and they're looking to explore different mezcals and different methods of making mezcal. So I think that niche has been growing, and it's a niche that's very
un nicho muy que está explorando.
That's being explored, but that at the same time that want to learn about good products and quality of mezcal, and a niche of the market that are exploring different types of agave and different ways to make mezcal.
So we're much more open now than we ever have been.
Está creciendo
it's growing.
Estas personas,
these people, this community,
está creciendo.
It's growing.
Pero
but
creo que
I
falta
think
mucho por
there's still a lot left to
difundir
to understand
parte de los productores.
From the side of the producers on how to create a mezcal that's traditional, and there's still a lot more to work with to be able to transmit that to people who are interested.
So from what I understand, I've not been to Michoacan yet. Of course, Oaxaca is quite safe, quite touristy, right? What is a day in the life of Michoacan? What is it like to live there? How does it feel?
Es un estado
fabuloso. It's a fabulous state. It has a rich
gastronómica y cultural
cultural history that's very important.
Seguramente de los más importantes
possibly
del país.
One of the most important of the country.
Y es un estado que aunque ha tenido
it's a state that has had
inseguras, pero
some insecure times, but in reality it's been advancing,
más seguro,
more and more it's becoming more secure. And fortunately, the area that we're in, it's close to Morelia. It's at a good level of security. And really,
es maravilloso. Creo que
it's fabulous.
Hay mucho todavía que
there's still a lot to know and understand of mezcal and our state and of the cultural richness.
Is it safer as a whole now, the state, than it was, let's say, a year ago?
Desde hace alrededor
Let's say
3 años
around
es más seguro. Pero,
3 years ago, comparatively, it's much safer. There still are regions that aren't as secure, especially in the southern region. The central area and towards the west is much more secure. So I think not the whole state, I don't think is having security problems, but I think the areas that were more insecure are now much better.
What drove you to make Michoacan official, make it recognized as a mezcal producing state?
Mezcal de Michoacán fue
Mezcal from Michoacan
oficialmente
was recognized officially on the 24th of November of 2012. It was recognized as an official region of mezcal.
Es un proceso que duró 7 años.
It was a process that took 7 years.
Que fue muy complicado.
And it was a very complicated process to obtain that. There was a real strong pressure from a lot of producers from Oaxaca that didn't want any more regions to enter anymore. No municipals coming into that. And so, even though it was proven that there was a history of 400 years of production, that's how it came to be.
In what ways does it embody traditional mezcal?
The 3 regions that produce mezcal, the western region of the state, near Jalisco, they distill in clay pots and that utilize only the cenizo agave. The other region is the central region. It's the most productive, principally cupleto. That's a type that's Filipino. And the third region, it's a region that utilizes more the agave Niquilio Solato.
Solamente utilizan ese tipo de
that only use that type of agave. So it's 3 types of regions that use different agaves.
De lo que es el municipio de Queréndaro,
near the Queréndaro municipal,
que utilizan solamente el maguey alto.
They utilize maguey alto.
Región centro
the central region and the eastern region, they use the Filipino distillation, and the western region uses the clay pots.
The same kinds of things we've seen in Oaxaca, just because that's kind of the template for it. So if you get some copper distillation, you get some clay distillation. We, David, and we'll talk about how Emilio and David met here in a second, but there's the cenizo, there's the cupiata, there's the alto, and then the pechuga. So you have these 4 really, really nice but different flavors. So what do you like flavor-wise? What do you like to sparkle into your mezcal?
Creo que
I think that
mezcal favorito o algunos de
my favorite mezcal or some of my favorite, depending on the occasion.
Creo que cada expresión es.
I think each flavor and expression is different.
Tenemos nuestros estándares.
We have our standards
sobre sabor,
over different types of flavors.
Pero creo que cada uno de ellos es.
But I think each one of them is different.
Y que me encuentro que aunque a mí me gusta.
I find that although I like one, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the one that I like is the one that the consumer will like. And there's different flavors and smells that they like. And finally, the mezcal is about diversity. And we need to make it this way. And knowing and understanding our biological, cultural history, that's what we need to understand. I think our mezcal, we like it because it's from our region. It's a mezcal that's made in a high altitude, in the mountains, where the majority of the times it's a mezcal that has a flavor that has more of a herbal flavor. A kind of a smell of wet dirt, kind of fresh from the mountains. And that is the profile of our mezcal. And that's why we like it, because that's what we have around our mezcal. And that's the final result of our mezcal. It's
el perfil, ¿no? de nuestros
That's our profile of our mezcal. It's that line of flavors.
So these bottles that have recently come into the States, care of Siembra Spirits, how did you meet David Searle?
It was
ocasionalmente.
Happenstance.
Bueno, realmente nos unió.
Well, really what united us
la pasión
was
por
the passion for
los destilados y los agaves.
The distilling of agaves.
Muy buen amigo de nosotros.
It was an occasion, a good friend of ours, Pedro Jimenez. He presented a documentary called Viva Mezcal here in the U.S. And he asked me for some tastings of mezcal just to pass it around to different bartenders here in the U.S. And a lot of them were asking, where can we find this mezcal? And in that moment, Pedro, when he returned, he was fascinated that people had loved it so much. All the bartenders that had tried it had loved it so much, and that they all wanted to have the mezcal in the United States. Well, knowing Pedro, and I already knew David through the Norma 86,
sobre varios talleres que hicimos.
Through different
fue cuando Pedro
bars
me
that we
recomendó
had.
que hablara con David, que creía que era el perfil adecuado
Pedro felt that
para poder
meeting with David would be the perfect combination to bring this mezcal to the United States. And so that's where I met him to work on this project.
It's done very well. It has a great reputation. Obviously, it's delicious. We're drinking the Alto, the Iñiquitans. I was saying that wrong until David corrected me one afternoon. But it's really lovely, and I've seen you touring around the States. Do you like being in the spotlight? Do you like the audiences? Do you like the questions?
Pues sí, me
yes.
interactuar con la
I like interacting with everyone
nuestro mezcal,
who's trying our mezcal, who's close to our product.
Saber ellos qué opinan, poder contestar,
to know what they think, what their opinions are, and be able to answer questions that they have.
Bien dice David, ¿no? Poder
and to know
educar,
and to educate, which I think is the only way to make things right and to educate how we do things and the way we do things and make our products with the idea to stay with the consumer and their favorite product.
I think it's to make it and see if people enjoy it. Not a lot of people get that connected to the public.
Creo que debemos aprovechar que somos una...
Well, we need to take advantage that we're a brand that really don't produce a lot and take advantage of it, interacting with our consumers more. We really need to take advantage of that. Interact with our consumers because those are the people that look for these products, and it's a small category. We're a small area, and those of us that make the product, we need to take advantage of interacting with those consumers.
Party. Fiesta. Mezcaleros. So I know you guys are heading to La Condesa here in a second, going to keep spreading the word about Siembra Metal and the Don Mateo, the wonderful mezcals, 4 in total now, and I imagine there will be more hopefully coming through. I'll have to talk to David about that. But it's a great piece of education. But the thing for me, I'm always curious, and I ask this of every guest. If Emilio, as a mezcalero, he could enjoy a drink, a mezcal, anywhere in the world, doesn't matter, and have a conversation with one person who is either living or deceased, who would Emilio like to drink mezcal with and have that conversation with?
Con mi abuelo Fidel.
With my grandfather Fidel. I would love it.
Pues no lo conocí.
I didn't know him, and
se habla mucho de él, no sé.
To know a lot more would be great.
What's a lovely way to bring the present with the past? It's very lovely.
La perspectiva del pasado con el presente y el futuro sería
the perspective of genial. The past with the present and the future would be great.
Well, I really appreciate, one, that I get to sip on this Alto with Emilio. Very, very delicious, and I think it does take me to the place that we're talking about in Michoacan, the place that's high, that's bright, that has a lot of moisture. I get that. It just kind of feels green to me.
Sí, demasiada humedad.
Yes, very humid. It's a high mountain that has a lot of humidity.
Demasiado húmedo, demasiado fresco.
Very fresh. I love it more than Morelia.
Y bueno, y tenemos
and well, we have water.
Son manantiales de agua que
water
el agua crece, más bien sale muy nace
comes out and that flows is very close to where we make the mezcal.
Yeah, you can taste that. That's where it takes me to. I would love to spend some time in Michoacan to distill and talk and smell, and it's been just a pleasure getting to chat with you, Emilio. Have great luck on the road, and I hope people really, really ask some great questions this afternoon for you.
Well, muchas gracias. Al contrario,
no, thank you. On the contrary, Mike, thank you.
I see you soon.
Very soon. Now that I know that you're there. And you like Taekwondo, I'm going to go visit you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, there we have it, the master mezcalero himself, Mr. Emilio Vieira. We can taste his cenizo, his cupriata, his iniquitans, and his patruga via Siembra Spirits. David Suro so kindly introduced us and brought him into town to speak to the bartending community here. And it was great getting to sit down and chat with Emilio about his journey, his return to tradition, in a sense. He carries the torch after so many generations, and it's amazing to be able to taste that mezcal with Emilio, his creation, his representation, his embodiment of the terroir and the general beauty of Michoacan. I hope the translation piece worked okay. I really want to dive more into the mezcal culture. I want to talk to more of the creators, more of those amazing minds in Oaxaca and Michoacan and Puebla and Durango, many other states of Mexico. And this is the first of many. So if you have suggestions, if you have things you would like me to cover, this is the first time that I really want to make that an open invitation. Please let me know It was great getting to chat. Thank you, Andres, for the translation. Thank you, David Suro. And thank you so much for listening to Show to V with Mike G. No matter if you're thinking to yourself, Wentworth is a better women's prison drama than Orange is the New Black, or if you really can't wait to see Dunkirk in 70mm at the Alamo Drafthouse Ritz location, Christopher Nolan bringing it yet again, please keep dancing.